We had another episode planned for today, but over the weekend, one story moved to the forefront. President Joe Biden said he's not going to seek a second term. Michigan is one of the key states in this race. There had been talk of our governor, Gretchen Whitmer, being in this federal office mix somehow. President Joe Biden and his administration have also put a lot of resources towards Detroit, Metro Detroit, and Michigan. So in short, this is where the national story intersects local, and so I think we need to talk about it. Welcome to your Daily Detroit for Monday, July 22nd, 2024. I am J.R. Stays. So to do this, Steve Freese, a journalist with a strong political coverage background, an overall smart guy. Well, it's been a minute, probably too long since we've had him on the show. Welcome back, Steve.
It's very nice to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Of course. So let's walk backwards here. What was your first thought when you first heard that President Joe Biden was not going to run again?
Well, I had just read a campaign email from the Biden-Harris campaign in which they were quoting the 7 Democratic chairs of the 7 swing states, including the one in Michigan, all of them being quoted saying, Joe is our guy. we're not pushing him to step down. We're going forward. And so I think that the surprise to me was that it happened today. I kind of think that there was a sense it was happening in some way, but the fact that it happened today was sort of like, oh, okay, I guess we're moving on now. The biggest political story before this was that there was this poll out that showed that Biden was losing by 7 points in Michigan. That is essentially the last shoe that dropped before he quit. I mean, I don't know. I doubt that it was a direct connection, although he had been looking at a lot of polling for the last several weeks.
So do you think that part of his calculus was people around him talking to him and saying, hey, not only is your presidency at risk, but frankly, Congress is in trouble too?
I don't think so. I mean, look, I don't know the guy. I don't know Joe Biden. I only know what I see. But I think it was just a really hard thing. I mean, I guess this has happened before, but not much. Lyndon Johnson decided not to run. That was a big deal at the time. But, I mean, this is such a strange situation because I don't know that anybody thought that Richard Nixon, of course, now we know better, but at the time, I don't think anybody thought that Richard Nixon was going to just destroy the democracy as we know it. And the stakes were not the same as they seem to be right now. The upside is that Joe Biden gets to look like this amazing patriot. The downside is that it took these weeks of reckoning. That really sad. I mean, it was a really sad time to watch this president who, spent his whole life trying to get to the White House, and now he has to voluntarily walk away from it because he's too old and because the math and the political calculations are off. I don't know. I mean, I imagine it would have been a very difficult decision.
Joe Biden's whole career in some ways, he's found successes for sure, but there's always been this overcast, this tinge of tragedy. The man has been through so much.
He didn't even get a convention. He didn't even get the kind of political convention that sort of coronates the nominee that everybody else gets. He didn't get the inaugural pageantry. I'm pretty sure there was no parade, all because of COVID, So, there's a lot of stuff that he missed by being the president, being the candidate who ran during COVID and won. I got to think that somewhere in the back of their head, they're thinking, the second time it'll be great. And there's not going to be a second time. And now we're right now in a period of 2 1-terms in a row, which is fascinating because we had 3 2-terms in a row, which only happened one other time in American history. So, the instability of our politics is very, very notable right now.
It is notable. Do you think for Democrats' chances, this was the right move?
Yeah. Look, if there hadn't been this huge groundswell of Democrats coming out publicly and saying they didn't think he could win, maybe. But I mean, once you say that, how can you walk it back? I mean, once you have dozens of members of Congress saying you can't win the presidency for our party, what do you do? How do you function in that situation? I mean, at this point, there really wasn't any other choice. They had to get off that horse and get on a different one. I actually do think that Kamala Harris is a pretty good candidate. And I saw today that Gavin Newsom has endorsed her. So, I mean, the Democrats are doing a pretty good job of falling in line very, very quickly behind her. And there's not going to be any big question, I don't think, about who the nominee is going to be.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer said her job is to elect Democrats. As of this recording, Elizabeth Warren, the Clintons came out endorsing. It feels like this is rallying and circling the wagon, saying, look, we don't have much time left before the election and even shorter until absentee ballots start coming in. I think, though, that that's a frustration some people have, Steve.
Right.
That if this was going to happen, having a little bit more time would be useful. How do you think about that?
I think they have plenty of time at this point. And I think that in ways that they could not have conceived, this was the exact right moment. After the Republican convention is over, they just spent 4 days attacking a guy who's not on the ticket anymore. Obviously, with the assassination attempt and the sort of, very dramatic circumstances of that incident, I don't know that there could possibly have been a better time, given that they had the debate in June that kicked all of this off. I mean, I don't know anybody who watched that debate and thought that this was a man who could do this. I mean, it was an incredibly sad thing to watch, even if you don't like Biden. And so, I think this is probably the best timing they could get. They now have this forward sweep ahead where they can rally behind her and get people excited. I mean, what do we know? We know that these two candidates were so unpopular, both of them, Biden and Trump. So the public has been dying for something else, some other viable option. And now they have one. She's younger and she's very photogenic and very intelligent. She's got the right experience. I think it's a pretty great second chance for the Democrats here. And now, we'll talk for the next month about who her running mate will be.
So do you think that we're going to hear pretty quickly, like in the next, week or so, or is this going to run out till the convention with the running mate?
I don't know. Typically, these things are held until the week of the convention. That's usually how it goes. About just before the edge of the convention, it is the one big piece of suspense. But in this case, I don't know. I mean, it might make more sense to hold on to the momentum and sort of tell the American public, we're not just giving you one new candidate, we're giving you two. And then there's like all this interest in these two new people, and they're out there and they're looking. I'm sure he or she will be a young person, and it'll be sort of a rock and roll kind of candidacy that will be in stark contrast to what the Trump campaign does.
That reaction by President Donald Trump was, what he posted on Truth Social was decidedly unpresidential and ungracious, I think. And like everything about it felt the wrong way to me, especially now that this is over, and I get the campaign back and forth. I get banter, but like there's a time to act like you might be like a president. And it's part of why it makes it difficult for me to talk about this, because I wish that it was like some parity as far as candidates and maturity. And, it's just gross.
I'm sorry. Are you suggesting that Donald Trump is kind of TOS? I mean, are you suggesting that he's not very nice? Because I think we knew that already.
I keep getting told that he's changed or changing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the constant pivot. But the thing that I found really weird today, and I just find this to be such a strange line of attack, is the Republicans who pretty much en masse have come up with what they think is this clever reaction that if Joe Biden is not fit to run for president, he's not fit to serve, and he should resign now. And there are a couple of things that are bizarre about that. One is that governing and running for office are two completely different things. Two, do they want him to quit? I mean, do they want her to now be the president and be running as an incumbent president? Like, is that good for their political calculation? Because that's the choice, right? I mean, why are they saying they think he should quit? What good would it do for them if he did? I mean, she would just be very presidential.
I mean, it would get people used to an idea that I think, I've heard this already in a number of corners, including in the African-American community, that there's a fear that there is a section of voter that will not vote for a woman or a woman African-American president. Different slices of this. I keep hearing that about middle America. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I nothing about her biography is a negative. I mean, the people for whom a black person or a woman could not be the president, well, those people aren't voting for a Democrat at all. And I mean, we saw this. We saw that actually, the country actually feels good about itself. It felt great about itself when it elected Barack Obama. People who didn't vote for him were proud that the country would vote for a person of that background. So I don't think that's a problem. I do think it'll be interesting to see who she picks, because on the one hand, I think it would be really kind of a fun campaign to watch if it was a Harris-Whitmer ticket. Like, two women, that's even better. That would be so much cooler.
I mean, look, there'd be a lot of energy between the two of them. Very colorful. Like, there's no way this would be boring to watch.
Yeah, I don't think that's what she's going to do. But, we'll see. I think that given everything that's happened this year, the Veep pick is going to have to be probably something more conventional. In other words, a white guy.
I have this mental image of her going to the bakery on the way home and picking up some white bread, because that's what she's going to need. So let's talk about these presidential ideas a little bit. I will put a pin to talk about Kamala in a little bit. I think she's really bright. I'm in the middle of her book, but let's talk about these vice presidential ideas. I feel like a lot of them don't have a ton of name ID outside of their state.
Yeah, that doesn't really matter. I mean, if you think about the fact that you remember what it was like when John McCain chose Sarah Palin. Nobody had heard of her on Wednesday, and by Friday she was like incredibly just one of the most famous women in the world. These things have, they happen very fast in this media environment. They're not looking for. I mean, hey, look, a Harris McConaughey ticket would be kind of awesome.
All right.
To my mind, the more I think about it, the more it seems likely that it'll be the governor of Pennsylvania for a number of reasons. One is that he's a white guy. He's young. He's got very, very high popularity in the states that you said that Michigan is the road to the White House, but Pennsylvania is more so. She could pick Whitmer, and that would probably seal Michigan for her, but I think that the right campaign she'll win Michigan anyway. The big question mark is Pennsylvania, and when Trump tries to run against a very popular governor of the state of Pennsylvania, he's going to have a hard time. Plus, he's a Jewish boy, so you do have something we haven't elected. We did have one. We did have a Jew, but he didn't win, sort of, and in 2000. But yeah, they kind of did win, but whatever. That's my expectation right now, is that it's the thing that makes the most demographic and political sense. And, they can't really beat him up for being not that experienced, because they just picked a vice presidential candidate who's been in politics for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because Governor Shapiro's record isn't super deep. But I mean, you got J.D. Vance, and he wrote a book and worked for Peter Thiel, I guess. And that was even for a short time. So in your mind, he's kind of that front runner. What about somebody like Pete Buttigieg? He's a Michigander now, Mayor Pete down in Indiana. But you think about a Shapiro over, say, a Buttigieg or a Bashir or something like that?
I don't think they go with Pete for a few reasons. One is he doesn't represent anybody. He doesn't have a constituency. He's only ever been elected to be mayor of South Bend, Indiana. So, I mean, he's an amazing figure on the stump. He's really good at going on television and, going up against the Fox News gang. And so I'm sure he will do that. And they don't need to put him on the ticket to get him to do that. So I don't see what he would bring.
Poor Pete's destined to be transportation secretary until 2036 or something.
Yeah, sure, why not? I do think that the gay element might feel a little risky, a little bit too much. You already got a woman at the top of the ticket. When Hillary was at the top of the ticket, it was a little different because her husband had already been the president of the United States. Her husband wasn't just going along for the ride. So, in this case, we have a second gentleman who would be the first gentleman. And I think that there's an acceptance of how that would go. I don't know that the country is quite ready for that, and a gay couple as well. I could be wrong about that, but, that's just my sense. I also just don't think that the risk is necessary. Andy Bashir, now there's a case where the name ID isn't there. Like you pick him, what? Because you think you're going to win. Was he the governor of Kentucky or Tennessee? I can never remember.
I want to say Kentucky.
Right?
Yeah, Kentucky.
Yeah, he's the governor of Kentucky. The Democrats are never going to win Kentucky. It's not really a serious thing. And you would have to get him so well known in such a short period of time to convince the people who would be much easier to get if you just took the governor of Pennsylvania. I just don't know that there's a value to going into a deep red state in this situation.
Now, I don't want to ignore Kamala at all in this because, look, and I regret this. My personal life was crazy in 2019. I didn't read her book that came out. Now I'm in the middle of it. She is so bright. She's got just so much horsepower with things, and it's really impressive, and she's got a lot going on. She's got a lot of deep ideas, justice. She talks about her upbringing, everything else. And I think that there is a lot in Kamala that when you look under the hood, people who are passionate about those democratic causes, they're actually going to really like, and they're going to like her the more they dig into her, at least if you go in beyond a soundbite.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything negative about her background out there. One of the things that bothered me about the Hillary Clinton thing was always that I was hoping that the first black president, first gay, whatever, that they would be self-made people, that they would have written their own stories. And the thing that bothered me about Hillary was that she didn't come out of nowhere and become who she is. She was in a lifelong political marriage, and everybody knew who she was. And she got to be senator of New York because she was Hillary Clinton. I like the story. I think most Americans like the story of a man or a woman who brought themselves into the public. But Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, I mean, honestly, even J.D. Vance, I don't mind exactly. It's these people who sort of start on third base and think that they've hit a triple that I'm not crazy about. I think it's good for the country. to have this kind of thing happening. I think that the Republicans are going to whine about how it was cheating and blah, blah, blah. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to care. Nobody is going to vote for Donald Trump because they think that Joe Biden was mistreated by the Democratic Party.
Yeah, that number is near zero. I agree with you. People value having choices in democracy. Like, this is part of the deal here. And there's this push on the right to try and sue Kamala off ballots. But I think efforts to remove candidates, will backfire with normal people. Voters want to choose, and they might view such things as undemocratic. And this sentiment, I think, is shared by both Democrats and everyday middle of the road folks who don't have a party, who want to be reasonable. They just want a choice. I just think it's a bad strategic move on the right.
The other thing that this whole thing and the sequence of events and how this happened serves is it serves to avoid what could have very likely happened if Joe Biden had said he wasn't going to run again and there was a primary and the vice president of the United States, who is a smart black woman, somehow didn't get the nomination. Like you said, the backbone of the party would be very bitter about that. Like, there are a lot of scenarios that could have worked out very, very badly for Democrats, that could have exposed racism and sexism within the Democratic Party that would not serve the Democrats very well. This kind of is the easiest thing. It's very easy. I do wonder about the decision to have a presidential debate in June. I doubt we'll ever see one again.
Yeah, no.
I mean, now you think back on that, and what a fateful decision that was. Like, yeah, I'll debate you in June. Oh, okay. I saw something somewhere where somebody was saying that Kamala should take Trump up on his debate a week offer every Thursday until Election Day together on TV. It'd be pretty good.
I think this energizes the ticket, Steve. I don't know how you feel, but I feel like this is going to change poll numbers pretty quickly. And I just get this sense that it's getting people fired up. It is interesting to me because here in the city, there's still a lot of support for Joe Biden. Even in that poll that was pretty damning in Michigan for him, 51% of black voters thought that Joe should stay in the race, which isn't the greatest number, but it was definitely the majority and on one of the strongest bits of support that he had. Now, I feel like, as I said, these poll numbers are going to change. I also feel like the Trump campaign is not going to know what to do next. They're going to have to start to spend a lot more money and a lot more faster than they had planned. And the roles maybe have now reversed, where Trump is the older guy, as opposed to this young person who's more energetic and more with it and ready to handle the job.
I do want to kind of pick on that because that is a line of attack on Donald Trump that I don't think is going to work very well. Again, it sounds very clever to say, okay, he's the oldest nominee in history now, blah, blah, blah. It's not that Joe Biden was 81. It's not that he was old. It's that he couldn't put together a sentence. It was that we watched him in real time. He's just a mess. And we've all got older relatives who start to slip and don't belong in that kind of situation. And Donald Trump, for all of his flaws, he's able to project himself as a vigorous person. And you can't think anything else of that, particularly given just his response to just the way that he went down and got back up at the assassination thing. I don't know that that's going to work. I don't know that there's anybody who's going to be like, oh yeah, Donald Trump, he's too old too. I just don't think so. I just don't think those are good. It's not that Joe Biden was too old. There are plenty of 81-year-olds who are in better cognitive condition than what we saw that day.
So what do you think the best line of attack is?
Donald Trump is a menace and a bully and a threat to democracy. And when he was president, we lived through day after day of chaos and turmoil. And he managed to undo Roe v. Wade and stack the court with horrible judges and seems to think he can get away with anything, and the court seemed to agree. And and 4 more years of that, you really want to go back to what that was like? I mean, there's plenty of ways to attack Donald Trump, and that was what was so frustrating about watching Joe Biden on the stage with him, was that he couldn't land a single glove against a candidate who's very easy to land a glove on. It was hard to imagine that Joe Biden could be quick thinking enough to respond to the Trump campaign and to go out there in public and tell everybody why this guy is a problem and why I should be the president. I think there are plenty of ways for Democrats to win this election. And I think that putting a woman at the top of the ticket when we know that the abortion vote has been incredibly energizing, I think it's a great circumstance for Democrats.
Well, as they say, shall we live in interesting times? And without a doubt, we are definitely in them. Steve Freese, always good to talk to you. And 'tis the campaign season. I'm sure we're going to talk more often. There's a lot happening. There's a lot that's going to be running through Michigan, a lot of local stuff, national stuff, and there will be more developments. If there's anything we've learned within a week, with 3 or 4 major things just in a row, it will not be boring, to say the least, my friend.
No, it won't be boring. And you and I still have to debate the Gretchen Whitmer book. I mean, I don't really think it's much of a book. It's more like a pamphlet, but whatever.
Well, you're on for that, without a doubt. Steve Freese, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to our members on Patreon, patreon.com/dailydetroit. If you've got feedback for this episode, dailydetroit@gmail.com. Would love to hear your thoughts as the campaign season ramps up. With that, I'm Jer Stays. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll talk tomorrow.